Good evening, folks. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family. We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. Bring the family. Bring your friends. We hope you have a wonderful time. Come back soon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Knights of the Pageless Library. We are a little podcast dedicated to reviewing audiobooks. I am Bo Knight, joined as always by my brother Ryan Knight. And today we are taking a look at The Dark Tower 2, The Drawing of the Three, written by Stephen King and narrated by Frank Muller.
Yeah, and we're kind of doing this as a follow-up, obviously, to The Dark Tower 1, The Gunslinger. And we're doing that at the kind of behest of a listener, actually, who kind of prodded us forward because we weren't super impressed with the first Dark Tower. It was maybe a little bit over our heads, I suppose. And
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And then, so this listener wrote to us and told us that moving forward with the series is actually a great idea because the books start to make far more sense the further into the series, I guess, that you go. So that's kind of why we decided to pull this one up and give it a listen. So if you have anything to say about this book or anything else, please feel free to email us. kotpl.pod@gmail.com is still the easiest way to get a hold of us and send us your thoughts. This book is surprisingly older than I thought. This book actually came out in 1987.
I know, I was kind of surprised to see that too.
Yeah, not only that, the audiobook version we're listening to, it came out in 2003, it looks like.
Okay, so that's even pretty old.
Yeah, for an audiobook, that's surprisingly old, so didn't realize that until right now.
And is this the same narrator as the first book we listened to?
No, the first one was George Guidall.
So how do you think Frank Muller compares?
I went back and listened to just a little bit of the first one in preparation just for the podcast, and while I thought that George Guidall was really, really good in the first Dark Tower, I think Frank Muller actually outshines him in this one.
I agree with you entirely. I think he is fantastic in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a ton of characters, but there are a lot of characters talking to, like, having conversations, and this guy keeps his voices spot on. They're all very distinct and very different, but not in an obnoxious way.
Yeah.
And I just love listening. I just love hearing him say honky muffas. Like,
yeah. He's honky muffa.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. Actually, the first part that almost gave me goosebumps, if I'm being honest, is very quickly in the beginning when he's doing the lobstrosity thing.
Oh,
Did
yes.
Did it jump? And I was like,
dude, that is so good and so eerie.
Dude, it creeped. It gave me goosebumps, like, hearing him say that, because I was like, first of all, it genuinely, like, surprised me the way he said it.
Me too.
And yeah, it gave me this very just serious feeling of unease, and I think that's what he was going for, and it worked very well.
Yeah, so I would say Frank Muller is an upgrade.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from George Goodall because I thought he did a very good job in the first one. But Frank Muller is an incredible narrator, I've decided. I mean, he definitely would be up there on a list, maybe like a top 10 for me now. So
yeah, maybe we got to go back and redo the top 5, huh?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it'd be close, to be honest. After listening to this, it'd be close. This, I will say that he was a joy to listen to for the length of this book, which was 12 hours and 47 minutes. So
yes, it's kind of I feel like that's about perfect for me. This is like, I would consider this like medium length.
Sure. Yeah, this one's getting up there, I've kind of always said it before that I think 10 hours is right about the sweet spot for a length of a book. So 12 hours, 13 hours, that's getting up there in time, but this was also a good length for this one. Um,
I
and I think
agree.
I'll have a little bit more I think to say on that once we pass the spoiler wall, but I just feel like this was it said what it needed to say, and then that's it all fit nicely into this 13 hours, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, that does make sense.
Uh, the what was I gonna say? Okay, so like we listened to this one through Audible, so if that wasn't already obvious, um, if you maybe have somewhere else that you listen to audiobooks or somewhere else you might suggest that we get our audiobooks from, because maybe you don't want to support a monstrosity of a company, we fully understand that. So please feel free to send that information our way, and we will check it out and see what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we do need to get our tentacles into some other uh, platforms because we've basically only been on Audible forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it kind of is just an ease of use type of thing for us, but I also wouldn't mind supporting something else if that is possible. So
Yeah, I entirely agree.
you could oh, see, okay, hang on. I probably have to go back on what I said. This actually says that this was released in 2016.
Huh.
I wonder if they acquired the audio rights to it in 2003 because it says by Penguin Audio in 2003. So I wonder if
Hmm.
they just acquired maybe the audio rights to it or something like that, however it works. But looks like
Well,
this one.
but I'm seeing a different version here that came out in 2012.
Oh, really?
Yeah, same narrator and everything. It for some reason
Really?
is 2 minutes shorter,
Okay, that's strange.
and it's more expensive.
Okay. Uh, what's the price on this one?
So the one that we listened to was 14.95. There is also another, The Dark Tower 2, the drawing of the three is 1849 for some reason. And as far as I can tell, it's the same thing.
Really? That's very strange.
Huh.
Interesting. So if anybody knows the reasoning behind that, please feel free to fill us in, because very stumped on that one.
Yeah, it is weird. Narrated by the same guy and everything. It's so odd.
Huh. Yeah, so let's talk about the big questions, right? What everybody comes here for, I feel like.
Yeah.
Um, is this one easy to follow?
I thought so. I did.
I thought, especially compared to the first one, this is nearly as straightforward as you can get. Um,
Yes.
it has some confusing perspective shifts. It has some um, like outsiders looking in on events type of things that maybe are a little confusing. But for the
Yeah.
most part, this one felt much easier to me to follow than the first book was.
I entirely agree with you on that. This one felt a lot more cohesive to me anyway.
Sure. Now, I'm not gonna say if you are doing some sort of task that you need to kind of all of a sudden it takes all of, your full focus away from the book. I'm not gonna say you're gonna be able to jump right back into the book and understand what's going on.
Probably not.
However, if you do have the time and you are like listening to this with all of your attention, this one is going to be much easier to follow, at least than the first one was, especially for me.
And I don't know if that's because I came in with the expectation that this was going to be a little wacky.
Sure. And this is a very like surreal book.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
we didn't really talk about what the genre and stuff of this book is, but it's very much so like a sci-fi fantasy, but
Mystery.
yeah, mystery, a lot of kind of dream.
Supernatural,
Yeah, exact.
paranormal.
Supernatural is a very good way to put it, with a lot of kind of very dreamlike sequence type things.
Yeah.
So those kind of things can be confusing, I'm sure, at times. But again, from the first book, though, this one was far easier to understand exactly cohesively what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like there were a lot less of, like, the first book, there were a lot of times that Roland was just like in his head.
Yeah. Yeah. And this time
Yeah.
he's in other people's heads.
Yeah. That's a very good way to put it.
Do you think this one is like easy listening?
Mm, for me, yes. I felt like this went down very, very smooth. But I don't know if like somebody else would think that, because I feel like there's kind of a lot of like kind of like gruesome and graphic things that happen in this
Very. Yeah.
that I feel like might be kind of hard to stomach, and a lot of like kind of harsh language.
Oh, let's be blatantly clear about that. Very harsh language, like
Yeah.
to the point where it could bruise your sensitive ears.
Well,
Like,
for sure.
and I'm not even trying to be like an asshole about that. I mean that there are legitimately people out there who will be 100% offended by the things that are said in this book.
But dude, but like I didn't find any of that grating though. I found this to be very, very captivating, and I thought it went down very, very smooth.
I agree with you. I'm just fair warning to
No, yeah.
anybody out there that like there are some hard like some N words with like a hard ER on the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Some,
and
there are lots.
yes, and the N word is said sometimes like 5 or 6 times in one sentence, I feel like.
Yes.
Now granted, once you understand the character it's coming from, it makes a little more sense. However, I'm just fair warning to anybody who like goes and maybe listens to this on our recommendation and they're like, "What the fuck?" Like,
Yeah,
you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, that yeah, that's very good to disclose that.
But yeah, just fair like explicit warning on that one.
Mhm.
So, um, what's your overall recommendation on this one then?
I'll be honest, when you said you wanted to do the Dark Tower 2, I was kind of salty and mad. I was like, I do not want to listen to this. I know I'm not going to like it.
Oh,
I was
okay.
genuinely very surprised, and I really enjoyed this.
Okay. Nice. Well, that's good. Yeah, so I would say we have to give a shout out to the listener who suggested it to us because yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I really, really liked this one. Like, oh my God, it almost felt like a whole different series to me.
It really did. Even though it really is very cohesive to the first one. And I would
No,
say
it is. It
that
is. But
that would kind of
I don't
be
know. Ugh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that would be like my one caveat to someone who wanted to listen to this. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but you do have to listen to the first one to even remotely understand what is happening in this one.
Yeah, you do. But it does have a nice little synopsis in the beginning that's pretty good.
It really does, yeah. And it actually sums up the first book very elegantly in like one paragraph.
I think the difference for me between book 1 and book 2 is like it's a little bit spoilery, but it'll tell you in the description. Like the people who get added to the story to me add so much, like as far as like driving the narrative forward and making
Sure.
it kind of more relatable for me.
Yeah, definitely.
It was it's actually so good. Like I'm really glad that we checked this out because I really enjoyed this.
I did too. Yeah, and it definitely I'm not gonna lie, when I said okay, like we're gonna do the second one, I also was very kind of like
I was like, God
hesitant.
damn it, no,
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough for that series, and God damn it, you know that.
And maybe that's probably how I was feeling too, as I was like, great, now we're gonna look like idiots again, because we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
another book that we clearly have no business like reviewing because we're not smart enough to understand it in the first place. But yeah, very pleasantly surprised with this one that it's
And I gotta say, I want to check out the rest of them now. I'm in.
I like at the end, I think it's right at the end of this one where he's like this is the second book in a series of 6 or 7 or possibly more books.
Yeah,
It's
and
just
Stephen King even comes on and he's like, I don't know if I'll ever finish it.
yeah, it's very, very interesting for sure.
So yeah, that's like 2 thumbs up, right? Like we both kind of like this one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think you kind of have to get through the first one in order to fully appreciate this one, though.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I
Because
mean,
the
these are
first book kind of sets up Roland's character.
right. Yeah, he is the gunslinger, but
Yeah.
now we're going to set up these 3 other characters who actually kind of have their own, titles in this story as well. So
Yeah.
there's clearly a reason for that stuff too, and it's clearly going to be set up later on, probably down the line in the series, I imagine.
Well, I would hope so. There's so many more books.
Right. Yeah, so with that, that's like you said, that's 2 highly recommended from both of us. So we're gonna pass the spoiler wall now, and we'll go ahead and just kind of talk about the story as a whole. Um, so if this does sound like something you want to listen to and you don't want it spoiled, please pause the podcast now. Go check out this book. Go check out the first one too. Also go check out a review of that one, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back here and hear what we have to say about the Dark Tower too.
Mm.
This one thing I appreciate about this book is actually you can kind of, now that I've listened to it, gauging, like going back and just reading the chapter names is going to help me remember what happened exactly in the book.
Yeah, the chapter names are great.
Yeah, it's super encompassing,
Yeah.
with just like 2 words. So this this does start off, like you said, with a kind of very quick summary of the Dark Tower 1, the Gunslinger, and it just kind of summarizes up everything that Roland went through during that story, and then it kind of sets you up for what is going on now with Roland as he goes forward in his quest for the Dark Tower.
Yeah, and we don't really know why he's seeking the Dark Tower still, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I
I
like
was gonna say,
later
because
on.
if you do know, like, tell me.
No, I don't think we do yet, and I like later on how Eddie, a character we'll meet later, I like how he's like something about drugs, and then he's like, it doesn't sound much different than your Dark Tower, something you're always chasing no matter what the problem is.
Yeah, that's very
So
true.
I thought it was kind of interesting. This do we know? Am I dumb? Do we know why Roland is on the beach where he's at?
That's just like where he wakes up right after he had that like mind melding thing that happened for years with the Man in Black.
Is that what it was? After the Man in Black like blew his mind, right? Where he showed him like that like a blade of grass could contain an entire universe all to itself and you would never
Mm-hmm.
know, or a speck of sand or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
just where like he wakes up. I
okay.
believe.
And he wakes up with the lobstrosities, right?
Yeah, at first, which I love the way that they're introduced. That it's like asking questions at him.
Oh, dude, so creepy.
Yeah, and then it comes up to him and fucking fucks up his hand and takes off like 2 fingers right off his right hand.
Yeah, it swipes at him and it chops off 2 of his fingers on his right hand. Yeah. Um, and as he's like scrambling away from it, I'm pretty sure it also swipes at him and it gets his boot, right? Tears the end of his boot.
Mm-hmm.
It hits him multiple times, and he realizes quickly that if he doesn't do something about this, he is going to die to this thing. It's going to kill him and devour him most likely. But he also realizes that every once in a while this thing will stop and it like puts its claws up in the air and like holds this pose, and Roland can't figure out what it's doing, and then it starts to come after him again after a few seconds. And Roland, being the gunslinger and being incredibly smart and observant, even under extreme stress, realizes that it's the sound of the wave coming in, right? That this
Yeah,
thing will stop and it puts its hands up as the waves come in. And I'm assuming that I don't know. Do they fully explain it? because do they do that when they're in the tidal range? That way they put their hands up like above the water if the water were to come up to them.
I think so. Maybe
That's
they
what
do fully explain it.
they might. If they did, I missed it. But that's all I know is he uses that to his advantage. That every once in a while this thing will stop every time a wave is coming in and put its hands up, and it stops asking him questions.
This thing, did we explain that it's like a lobster that's like freaking like 4 feet long,
Yeah, that's what they end up calling them is lobstrosities,
which is such a good name. So
such a good name. Oh my gosh, I wish I would have come up with that for like a D&D game.
Yeah,
So
you
good.
still could.
I mean, I might still use it, yeah, because it's really good. And Roland also, so now that he's missing a couple fingers, he also like can't get his gun out like he normally could. Something
Yeah.
it would normally be super easy for him. And his ammunition has all been soaked in the seawater also.
Not all of it, but most of it.
Yeah,
Not
a lot of it.
which I love this running through line through this whole book that like sometimes you don't know if the gun's gonna go off or not.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. I can't remember. Does he end up getting his gun out, but he like drops it, right? Because
Well, he tries to draw his right gun, his gun for his right with his right hand, and it doesn't work. And then he pulls his left gun, I think, and blasts the first one.
yeah, well, he drops his right hand gun first
Yeah, he
because
does.
he forgets that he's missing his fingers. So, yeah, he ends up killing this thing, barely, but he's pretty badly wounded. Like, like I said, missing some fingers. I'm pretty sure it slashed his foot and like wounded him to that.
And at this point too, I'm thinking he was already like starving and like exceptionally thirsty.
I think so too. I think you're right. I can't remember now. So the first chapter is called Prisoner Argument, and I'm pretty sure that's what we just discussed. And then the second chapter is called Prisoner the Sailor. But I'm pretty sure that one just opens up with Roland being like, "Am I the sailor? Am I the prisoner?" Like he's asking himself these questions.
Mm-hmm.
If he is that person. But I don't remember what the through line is between those chapters as to what, if he figures that out or not.
He's like dwelling. I think that chapter's like about him like dwelling on what the man in black told him, right? Like the 3 people he's gonna meet. He's gonna meet the prisoner,
Oh, yes.
the Lady of Shadow, and the pusher or the murderer.
Yeah, the murderer. That's right, because he showed him like tarot cards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but he and I believe the man in black told him, right? Like the prisoner, his captor is called Heroin.
Yes. Yep. You're right.
And does that slide right into like him finding the door, which
I feel like it does.
Some of the best writing I feel like I've ever heard.
Yeah, like
the way it's described.
Weirdly descriptive. Yeah. Yeah, so Roland ends up finding this door just kind of standing on its own on this beach.
But he can only see it from one direction though.
Yeah, and like it's kind of like paper thin from the side. So like at one angle he can see it, at another angle he can't at all.
Yeah, which I think is so cool.
It's very interesting. I want to mention too that and this is a very, very small detail. So this book is broken down into chapters, and then each chapter is broken down into parts.
Yeah.
And each part is broken down into numerical pieces. So very like long form, like when you're typing and you have like the little bullet points and they just keep indenting on themselves.
Yeah.
But some of these numerical points are literally like 3 words. It's very strange because I don't know if you noticed that it'll go like 15. She looked out from her hiding place and she saw the man's back.
Yeah.
16. Like it's that quick sometimes, and I don't know why Stephen King does stuff like that, but I almost find it effective. Like it almost catches you off guard. Like if you weren't listening, you definitely heard them say 15 and 16 within like 3 seconds of each other. So I feel like it almost draws your attention back into the book in a weird way.
Yeah, I was kind of confused at what was happening at first.
I don't know why he does it. But I find it
I don't know either. It's some
effective.
sort of fever dream, but it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Roland finds the door, and the door has an image on it. And the
Oh
image,
shit! What is the image on the first one?
why do I want to say, is it a baboon? That's not right, is it?
Maybe.
I can't remember, to be honest. Yeah, I can't remember what's on there, but just
I
know
don't
that
remember.
there is something on there, and then the word prisoner is on there, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Roland opens this door, and I love that he immediately slams it because he could he got so scared because he can see like the earth from insanely high up, and he had this horrible feeling of falling, and it scared him so bad that he slams the door shut. And at first he's like, I'm not even gonna do this. I'm just gonna lay here and die. I'm not even gonna try it. But then he ends up opening the book, and we, as the listener, realize he's actually seeing the view from like an airplane out
Yeah, which
the
is so
window.
cool.
Yeah. So even though he's standing beyond this door, he's actually seeing through someone else's vision, basically, is what it is. It's very disorienting to him at first and very confusing to him also because Roland, remember, exists in a time, what is it, forgotten, basically, or after the world was forgotten.
Yeah, I saw
So,
something like that. I can't remember exactly how they put it.
and do we know, is it in the future or is it in the past?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, you don't really know. And that's kind of where I feel like the really surreal part of this book comes in, is that while yes, Roland has like a revolver pistol, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not from a time long before ours or
Or
long
long
after
after
ours.
hours.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
a whole different time altogether.
Right. So Roland is making these kind of observations through these eyes, right? And it's very interesting to hear how he says things like the stewardess, he calls them like what does he call them? Army women.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
oh, yeah. Like the way he describes stuff, and I love the way he like said stuff wrong too.
yeah,
Oh, it's so good. The
the
Aston.
Aston. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one I
it's
always came back
so
to
good.
also. Yeah. Um, so what Roland kind of quickly realizes is that he's looking through the eyes of another person who is on this flying carriage, is how he puts it.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we jump to Eddie's perspective of like Eddie kind of like mind recapping what he's doing?
yeah, yeah. So then we meet Eddie. Eddie Dean is actually the name of chapter two.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I think Eddie is such a good, a well-written character,
Yeah,
like from start to finish, so good.
I agree. We figure out that Eddie is a young man who is both addicted to drugs, especially heroin, and is also kind of in the racket of selling drugs and moving drugs for this guy, Balazar, right?
Yeah, he is a mule. And what's his brother's name?
Henry, is that right?
Henry. Yes,
Is that it?
thank you.
So, uh, we figure out that Eddie is on this plane because he is currently being a mule right now on the plane, right?
Yeah, he
He,
has cocaine duct taped underneath both of his armpits.
right. Somehow he was able to get on the plane with them, but
I guess he was
now,
coming from some shithole country, right?
oh, yeah, you're probably exactly right. But now he's headed back to New York City with this, with these drugs under his armpits. And he, Eddie, is having like horrible anxiety of that he's going to get caught, right?
Yeah,
And we're also getting these little evidence that Roland, not only can he see through Eddie's eyes, but that there's a potential, Roland has a feeling that maybe he can do more than that, right?
yeah.
Um,
Like if he were to actually go into the doorway.
yeah, like what would happen if he went through the doorway? Um, and I feel like that's the very next chapter is called Contact and Landing, and that is when Roland just decides He knows in his guts that Eddie is part of this bigger plan, right? Possibly part of the three. And he knows that if Eddie gets caught with these drugs, that he will not be able to help him anymore. So Roland takes a leap of faith and he goes through the door. And what that ends up doing is he actually goes into Roland's mind, and he is Roland now.
Is Eddie.
Or excuse me, he is Eddie. Yeah, he basically
Just
pushes.
because it's kind of confusing.
Yeah. Roland pushes Eddie's consciousness like to the back of his mind, and now Roland is in charge of his body. And the only kind of evidence that we get of this is that we get little blips too of the stewardess who is helping Eddie during the flight, realizing that his eyes have changed color.
Yeah, they like go to like a piercing blue.
Yeah. So Roland ends up taking Eddie's body, and I like this too because Roland also is now he can see through the door. So this part really like mind fucks with me. Roland can look around in Eddie's body and see back through the door in real time. And he realizes his body is just like passed out on the sand.
Yeah, he's just like laying there unconscious, is what I assume.
And he's like, I hope the lobstrosities don't find my friggin' unconscious body because they'll just murder me right there. It's also very like a good feeling for Roland to be now in Eddie's body, which is like young and healthy and not feverish like his body was.
Yeah, because Roland he's not doing well.
No, and I love how he that's right, because the first thing he does in Eddie's body is order food. And
he's like, can I get a popkin? And then he like looks in his head and he's like, oh no, I mean sandwich.
Yeah, and I love that how he like has to look through Eddie's mind to find the right word.
Yeah.
I mean sandwich. And she like gives it to him, and I like that he takes the sandwich to his own world, right?
Yeah, so he can take stuff with him.
Yeah, so this is when he realizes he can take things out of the Eddie's world. But then he tries to go back, right, with something of his, and it does not come with him. So now Roland is trying to put the pieces together of, okay, how does this interaction work? But before he gets to play around with it too much, basically the stewardess figures out that Eddie is acting really fucking weird, and she assumes that he has a bomb and he's going to try to blow up the airport once they get to the next place. So they call ahead. She tells the pilots they call ahead to New York and tell them what they think is happening. And Roland catches all of this, right? Like
he does, because he's super observant.
Yeah, exactly. So what he ends up doing is he takes Eddie's body into the bathroom of the airplane to try to get the drugs off of him before he gets caught. And I like this part because they end up landing and Eddie is still in there because they're trying to get the freaking drugs off of him. And what Roland ends up
pulled Eddie with him all the way through to his side.
Yeah, that's what he ends up having to do is he pulls Eddie through the door back to the beach. And he's like, you have to get the drugs off here and you leave them here and then you go back to your body. It'll work. Like they'll stay here. You won't have them anymore in your world. So they do this, they fumble through it, and the interaction between the two characters is very good. Because you have Eddie, who's this like young, like he's in his early 20s, you know, kind of like upstate New York accent type thing, you know. What are you giving me such a hard time for? Like,
he's voiced super well.
Oh, dude, it's so good. And then he doesn't like to take shit kind of from anybody, but he also realizes that maybe Roland is his only chance of not fucking this up. So so he ends up getting the drugs off, leaves them in Roland's world, and he goes back to his world, back in his body. And by this time, Like the cops are there outside the bathroom door, and they end up kicking the door in
Yeah, and he's
on
like,
Eddie.
"Whoa, man, can a guy take a shit?"
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're like, well, obviously you flushed the drugs. And he's like, well, go ahead, go take a look or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously they can't find anything on him. They find they find it weird because obviously his body, he had tape all the way around him. So they do find the evidence that
Mm-hmm.
something was on him, but Eddie's really quick at coming up with a reason for why.
What does he say? I
Um,
don't remember.
Something about he wasn't able to take a shower. He was on the beach or whatever, and he woke up late for his flight, so he couldn't shower. So he's like, I don't know what's on me. I don't know what kind of fibers you found on me, because they're trying to
Oh,
say that some of the sticky stuff had fibers in it. Um, he also has a laceration on him because he was using Roland's knife to cut the tape, and he
oh
cut
yeah, that's
himself.
right. Because the knife's like razor sharp.
Yeah. And he ends up being let go by the cops because obviously they can't find any reason to like arrest him. They
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing on him. They even take him in and they do like a full cavity search on him, and yeah, they can't find anything. So they basically just have to let him go. So Eddie is distressed though because he finds out that Balazar, the guy he's supposed to be moving these drugs for, um, has his brother, right? Has
Yeah.
Henry.
Which
And
it's super fucked up that the way that they like have him hostage is they're just giving him heroin.
it's pretty disturbing.
It's so
Like,
fucked up, dude.
yeah, so Henry's brother, excuse me, Eddie's brother, Henry, also has a huge problem. And I will have to say, I appreciate the way that Stephen King goes about this. We get just enough backstory about Henry to care about him as a
Yeah,
character.
exactly.
We don't overly get crazy backstory. We basically find out that his brother was drafted right into Vietnam.
Yeah.
Um, he went over there. He was wounded, so he came home, and he's all fucked up. And we get a little bit of backstory about when they were kids, like some stuff that happened to them when they were really young. And then we also get kind of what happened leading up to this point. Basically, while his brother was messed up, he started doing drugs. That was like his escape. And now they're both hooked on them, essentially.
Yeah, they're both doing heroin.
Yeah, and yeah, they're basically keeping Henry hostage by offering him like holding heroin out in front of him like a carrot. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
So he's not like tied up or anything. He's just freaking doped out of his mind.
Yeah. Um, and so Balazar is obviously kind of like this mafioso leader of this gang kind of
And
thing,
he
right?
likes to build card towers. Okay.
Yeah. We also get a very uh Roland, when they get to New York, he immediately is like, "That's it. That's the Dark Tower." When he
Yeah.
sees like the Chrysler building, right? I'm
Yeah.
assuming. Yeah, and Eddie's like, "What the hell are you talking about? That's just the freaking Chrysler building. Like, what do you
Hmm.
mean? Like, no, we got to go here or whatever to wherever Balazar is, and he might be in the tower. He might That might be where he's at. Um, but basically, they're in this whatever apartment suite, whatever you want to call it, with Balazar and all his thugs, his mafia. And when Eddie shows up, he is supposed to deliver the drugs, right? But
Yeah.
he doesn't have them with him.
But
So,
he tells them, he's like, I'm gonna go in that bathroom, and when I come out, I'm gonna have your drugs.
yeah,
But nobody can watch me do it.
right. And Balazar's like, "Nope, this dude's going with you." Like, they're like, "You're gonna strip naked, and this dude's gonna go in there with you
Oh, they
because,
cavity search him before that too, because I remember that one guy talking about getting a junkie shit on his hands.
yeah, yeah." Yeah, they fully check him because they think he's lying. They just think that he has nothing to give them, and
Hmm.
now they're threatening Eddie with his brother's life, basically, if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do. So he they go in the bathroom. Eddie agrees to go in the bathroom, butt ass naked, with this other dude. But basically, what has to happen is Roland comes through the door in his own body, right?
No, they pull that guy with them and kill him on the other side.
Oh, that's the first thing they do. Yes, you're
Yeah.
right. Um, just before we go
In
any
a
further,
fucking brutal way, by the way.
yeah, before we go any further, you don't have your phone close to your microphone, do you?
No. Is it
Oh,
making that sound?
yeah, it is. I'll make sure mine's far away too. Just don't. I just noticed it every once in a while. It's not nearly as bad as it was the one time, but anyways, yeah. What are they? Okay, so they. That's right. They open the doorway and pull that dude through into Roland's world.
Yeah, and they fight with him for a while. But the way that they kill him is Roland shoots into his gun as he goes to shoot,
Oh,
which
that's
like
right.
explodes his gun and like blows his head off.
Yeah, that's right. Um, and then Roland realizes that they are both gonna have to go back and like fight it out with these dudes. There's like 8 guys and there are 10 guys. So Roland comes back to New York physically with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now you got Roland and Eddie. Eddie has one of Roland's guns too, right?
Yeah, he does.
And Roland, he I think he's mentioned it before, but he feels like Eddie is also a gunslinger. And he kind of finds out at this point that he very clearly is. Because even though Eddie has like very little experience in like shooting, he goes full crazy and like just starts blasting these dudes away.
Yeah.
And this kind of culminates with this big gunfight in this small place. The mafia guys are not very smart because the one dude busts in with like a Tommy gun type thing and just starts laying out his own friends because he can't control it when he's firing at full auto. Um, and I
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
that
which is
detail.
funny to me. Like he just like fucking shoots up the wall on accident.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that that's a detail because you always see that in the movies, guys have their full auto rifles and they have like perfect control over them. And it's like, I don't know, man, like especially and he even says something about the way the guy kicks in the door and the way he's standing and he's holding the gun down by his waist. He has no control over it whatsoever when it starts going off. It's just a
Hmm.
very interesting detail. Um, one dude ends up getting killed, I'm pretty sure, with like a sawed-off shotgun. Just a freaking gory ass fight that ends up all the worse because at one point in the fight, another dude who was with Eddie's brother, which we should mention, right before all this went down, they gave Henry a dose of heroin and he ODs right there on
Yeah,
the
he
spot
dies.
and he dies. Well, this dude thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and cut his head off and throw it into the room at Eddie.
Yeah, which is so fucked up.
It's really fucked up and it sends Eddie into an absolute rage and they end up just decimating these guys. Um, but once all that is done, what they end up having to do, and actually I think we skipped over that. They got Roland medicine first, right? Because they got him
Yeah,
like
they get him
penicillin.
some penicillin like pills or something.
Yeah, and the um Aston.
Yeah, some aspirin.
Yeah, yeah. Because it's interesting because Roland can read some of the letters, but they're not all obvious to him. So
Yeah, because
that's
some of it's the same and some of it isn't.
right. Um, so then we move into the Lady of Shadows. So Detta and Odetta. And
Yeah, which this chapter is kind of weird.
yeah, I was
Like,
just gonna say this is where the books I thought for sure I was like, okay, now I'm gonna be lost. Because the whole story with Detta and Odetta is pretty confusing.
It's confusing to me too.
But basically, um, when we first, because Roland and Eddie have to go like way down the beach, right, before they find the next door.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah, and Roland is like, I gotta go in here. Like this is what we have to do. I have to do this by myself. And Eddie threatens him. He's like, if you go through that door and you leave me here
Yeah,
in this world,
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
yeah, I will kill you. I know what happens to you. He said, I know your body's just gonna be laying here and I will kill you. And he really does. He thinks about it. Like he really considers doing it because Roland is just
No,
like,
dude,
I have to do
he
this.
pulls his knife and puts it to his fucking throat.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He really considers it.
Yeah.
But Roland is like, I have to do this by myself.
Yeah. It's like,
So
kill me if you want, pussy.
yeah, so Roland goes through the doorway and he ends up in the mind of this lady, which I don't know if it's mentioned right now. So Eddie's time was in the 80s
I think so.
in New York. Maybe like 79, 80. I can't remember
Yeah,
off the top of my
something
head.
like that. Maybe it's 79, and that sounds right.
But now he's in New York again, but in like the 50s. Um, and we get like these jarring descriptions of Detta, right? From like just her wreaking havoc on things, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it's like alluded to in the very beginning that she's like two different people,
Right.
essentially.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, so you get like flashes of her. She's like doing normal stuff, and then she's like busting into Macy's and stealing all the fucking cheap ass jewelry.
yeah, and I like the description though of while they're looking through the door, the vision in this kind of throws Roland off, but doesn't really throw off Eddie because Eddie is like, oh, it's kind of like watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what Roland first picks up on is he's like, this doesn't look like somebody walking because the vision is floating very low and very steadily across the ground.
Yeah, which is
And
such a
so
good detail.
I thought so too. Um, and then he knows that this view that he's looking through is obviously somebody else that he needs to be in contact with. So it's obviously somebody else, part of the three. So when he realizes they are stealing all this jewelry at Macy's, he just like dives right in because he's like, they're gonna get in trouble, they're gonna get caught, and the whole thing's gonna be fucked. So he dives right in and he immediately pushes this uh person to the side. Well, when he pushed got in Eddie's voice, Eddie sort of just like he knew he was there, but he let him kind of intrude on his mind.
Mm-hmm.
This lady fights him the whole time, like trying not to let him in her mind. And we also get this distinction from Roland that he feels like there's more than one person in this body.
Yeah, and so she like knew what to do when he tried to do that.
Right. He ends up taking over though. So this is what we were talking about in the beginning. So Detta, the lady who he just took over, is a she is a very, very like feisty black woman
Oh yeah.
who constantly calls Roland and Eddie, who are both white, she calls them like as many racist things as she could possibly think of. And
Yeah, lots of honky.
honky, she's constantly commenting on things about their skin, constantly calling them gray meat.
Yeah,
And yeah, she calls them honky mofos. And
talking
it,
about how small their peepees are.
yeah, I just love it how when Roland refers to it, he's like, and she just kept referring to us as honky mofos. Like,
Yeah.
it makes no sense to him
Yeah,
whatsoever.
he's like, I don't know what that means.
Um, so he ends up taking her over, and he immediately brings her back onto the beach, though, right? Like, takes her because they
She
go
they like mind
changing room.
wrestle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they like accidentally like fall through the door.
Well, he takes her. He takes the because she's in a wheelchair. That's the whole like vision down low and smooth movement, takes the wheelchair and everything into the dressing room and shuts the door and then pulls her into his world from there. So obviously the next people who come in are confused because they followed the thief in there who they clearly saw stealing the jewelry, and she's just gone. But when they get into Roland's world, it's basically a completely different person, right?
Yes. She becomes Odetta, right?
Yes. Yeah, so there's Detta Walker and Odetta Holmes.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets even more confusing later, we'll find out.
Oh, yeah, the end, I was like, wait, what?
So Detta and Odetta have like no legs from the knees down. Their legs have been cut off from the knees down. And we're going to find out how that happened later. But we also...
Oh, it's so fucked up.
Yeah. We also... Odetta explains, though, right, that she has a large missing chunk of time because she got hit with a brick, right?
Yeah, like she was walking with her family and a brick like fell off a building and hit her in the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she
which
explains...
caused her to go into a coma.
Right. So okay, so the Detta Odetta one was a little confusing to me because they end up like they have her already on the beach, right? So they basically don't see any other reason to go back into her world, right?
Yeah, I don't believe they can go back. I think the door's gone.
It might be once she's there.
And maybe that's not right, and I'm sure fucking some Dark Tower super fan is like, it's actually still open, you fucking idiot.
I feel like Roland decides there's no reason to go back into her world, though.
I feel like when he pulled Eddie through, the door's closed, like they can't go back once they're on this side. Well, but that doesn't work because I guess he went back before, so they must have stayed open.
Yeah, that's not completely true, but I feel like with her, once they have Odetta there, she agrees to go with them, right?
Yeah, she's super agreeable.
But is it while they're sleeping that Detta comes back?
I don't remember exactly. Maybe.
I feel like it is. And I feel like what happens is it's interesting because we get it from like her perspective and she's sneaking up on this honky muffa and she's gonna kill him, she decides, because she's insane. Like when I say she's insane, I can't like stress that enough. This lady is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like psychopathic. And we figure out that it's Eddie that she's sneaking up on, not Roland, even though it makes it seem like it's Roland because it's from Roland's perspective at points. But he's watching her sneak up on Eddie. And then he stops her at the end before she is going to kill him. And now they're stuck with her, and she is insane, and they have to freaking deal with her being insane, and they know they have to get to the next door. But she like won't let them push the wheelchair with her in it.
She like purposely like fucking stalls the brakes so she falls over and shit.
Yeah.
Just to be annoying.
She also like basically tells them go ahead and kill her. Like she doesn't care. And she kind of even makes it seem like she'll kill herself, and she just doesn't give a shit because she knows it would be difficult on them if she kills herself. So now they basically have to try to get her down the beach all the way to the next door, which Eddie feels like if from his door to Odetta's was far, from Odetta's door to the next one is going to be even farther.
Yeah.
For some reason, he just knows that to be true.
And at this point too, like Roland is really fucked up because he didn't get enough medicine to begin with to like fully beat the like virus with their, or I guess
the
bacterial infection that he had. Yeah. So now he is like on death's door, like really, really sick.
Yeah, he's really struggling. We kind of get hints though that so while Odetta, I should mention while she was there, like Odetta, super nice, like
Yeah.
super nice, super helpful. And Eddie like almost immediately feels like he's like in love with this girl.
Mm-hmm.
But then Odetta comes back and she's just insane. And it happens a couple of times. They like switch. Um, and I feel like what it ends up leading to is, oh yeah, so while Odetta is there, Roland tells Eddie, you need to take her and go. I'm slowing you two down. You need to just go and find the next door.
Mm-hmm.
So because Odetta is there helping, she's like helping him push the wheelchair down the beach, and they go pretty quickly and they find the next door. So then the idea is that he will leave her there and go back and get Roland in the wheelchair and bring him
Mm-hmm.
back to the door. Because they try, Eddie and Odetta try to open the door and they can't. They can't move the
Yeah.
handle.
Roland has to do it.
Right. And Eddie leaves Odetta with the gun that Eddie gave him, or that Roland gave to Eddie.
Yeah.
Even though Roland specifically said, no matter what you do, don't leave her the gun.
Yeah. But Eddie didn't listen because he's stupid.
Yeah, and he loves Odetta.
That's
like,
true.
So then he hurries back and he gets Roland, and then it takes like 2 days for them to get back to where they made it to because Roland has to keep stopping, and even though he's in the wheelchair, they have to like stop and sleep at times.
Yeah, because and Eddie is just like exhausted at this point too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and he even tells Eddie that. He's like, you need to stop and get like 8 hours of sleep before we can even continue.
4 hours.
I feel like it also has to do something with they can't travel at night because of the lobstrosities too.
Oh yeah,
Like,
you're right. They can't.
the part of the beach they would have to be on is where those things come out of the water. So they make it back to where the door is, but Odetta is gone. And Eddie starts to have like the idea that Roland might have done something with her, right?
Yeah, kind of. He just starts to like panic.
Yeah, like to the point where he's like, well, maybe you snuck up here and killed her while I was asleep. And Roland's like, I can barely walk. Like,
Yeah.
he's like trying to tell him that he's being crazy. And this whole time too, they've been hearing like this weird like wildcat sound, right?
Yeah, some sort of big beast making a
Yeah.
big noise.
So Eddie is also freaking out that, maybe Odetta's in danger. So they end up getting to this door though, and Roland is like, there's a couple things. I have to go through this because I gotta get medicine too. Like, I
Yeah.
have to get better or I'm going to die anyways. So he goes in, right? He goes into the door and leaves
Yeah,
Eddie.
this door part like fucking blew my mind.
Yeah, and so this part is called The Pusher, by the way. This is chapter 1 of The Pusher is basically where we're at. You want to go ahead and talk through this one?
Well, so we get like a little blip before Roland goes through of the guy that he's going into. His name is Jack Mort. And the scene that we get is him dropping a brick off of a building and hitting a little black girl. So he like went into the mind of a psychopath, but immediately Roland realizes that this is the guy that pushed Jake in front of the car.
Right, which ended up sending Jake to his world.
Exactly. It's so crazy. Like when I heard that, I was like, oh shit. And he's also the guy that fucking pushed Odetta Holmes and got her legs cut off by the train.
Yeah, and we end up getting all of that stuff kind of explained in detail, right?
Yeah.
I thought the very first thing that happens though is that the guy is getting ready to push Jake in front of the car, and
He is.
Doesn't Roland take him over and stop him from doing it?
Yes, he does.
And Roland immediately is like, "Oh, I might have just created some weird time paradox thing, because what if now Jake never came through and helped me? And yeah, it ends up working out for him. But so what he ends up doing with Jack is he needs to use Jack to now he needs to get medicine, right? And he also realizes it would be good if he could get some more ammo for his weapon, if
Mm-hmm.
possible. And I want to say this is now like in the 90s or something when
I
he's,
can't remember.
but either way, he's in New York again, just in a
Yeah, he's in New
different
York.
time. Um, and so what he ends up doing is he takes, I like this because he goes to first he goes to a weapon shop, right? Like a gun shop
Yeah, gun store.
to see if he can get ammo.
Uh,
It it's just funny because the guy kind of like describes him. Well, it has to be after the Terminator movie came out because that's what this guy describes it as,
yeah,
right?
true.
His kind of the way he's acting, because constantly Jack is stopping to like, I imagine him getting like this blank look on his face while Roland is like searching through his mind for the right words to say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Roland ends up like pulling a fast one on this guy because this guy won't sell him any ammunition because he has to have a license for it. So
But I
Roland,
love the way that he figures out what caliber he needs because he doesn't know, like, in terms of that. He's like, just show me a magazine and I'll point it out to you.
yeah, I'll know it if I see it.
Yeah.
He's using the excuse that he's trying to buy ammo like for his brother or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but I like how he kind of gets a fast one on this guy because the guy won't sell him the ammo. The guy's actually kind of trying to be a legitimate like weapons dealer.
Yeah, he is.
And I love that Roland, so he drops his wallet and he kicks it under the counter in front of him, where the guy is standing. And then he goes outside and he's like, he saw two more gunslingers, these
Yeah, I love that he
police
calls the
officers.
cops gunslingers.
Yeah. And I love how he talks about how they don't look like they have kept themselves in very good shape and they clearly don't take very good care of themselves and stuff. But he goes up to them and he tells them, he's like, that guy in there took my wallet. Well, the cops have been wanting to bust this dude for a while because they think that he's been moving drugs through his store and he's also been selling guns illegally and some other shit. So the cops go in there and Roland ends up being like something about he hid my wallet under the counter, and they look and as they find it they're like, hey, he's right, and then he like smashes the cops' heads together,
Yeah.
and then he ends up, what does he do? He takes the ammo from
Yeah,
the
he gets the
dude.
guy to give him the ammo and he handcuffs him and he's like, those cops will let you go when they wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a pretty funny like scene. He just like loads his pockets with fucking 45 cal basically ammo. um I like to when he's going to buy the ammo. The guy's like, how much you want? He's like, you want a box? And he's like, how many come in a box? He's like, 50. And Roland is just like blown away because
Yeah.
in
He
his
expected like
world,
6.
yeah, because in his world, ammunition is extremely hard to come by
Well, and I
because,
get the vibe that he like made all the ammo himself.
yeah, he even says that he had to like, when he looks in the box of ammo, he's like, it hasn't been reloaded at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get the idea that he has to like make his own bullets and reload his own shells. I don't know, it's just a funny detail. So then he takes Jack's body to the pharmacy
Yeah,
to
the apothecary or whatever he calls it.
yeah, to hold it up. Dude, he like pulls a gun on the dude. He's like, give me all of whatever. And the guy's like, penicillin? He's
Yeah,
like,
the guy's like, you just want
yes.
penicillin? He's like, yes.
Legit like robbing the place, and the guy's like, this dude's holding me up for like one of the most common drugs you could possibly
Yeah, like
ask for.
$65 of penicillin.
Yeah. It's just a funny detail. Um, so the guy obviously just gives him the penicillin because he's like, whatever, man, like just take it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then Roland realizes, right, at some point that Jack is not part of the three.
Yeah, he's not part of the like 3 people that he needed to be able to reach the Dark Tower.
Right. So he realized when he was coming through the door and it said the pusher, he was like, this must be the death. But he's like, he didn't know. He's like, is it my death? Is it this guy's death? Is it somebody else's death? So he ends up figuring out, like you said, that this is the guy who dropped the freaking brick on Detta's head or Odetta's head when she was young.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the guy who pushed her in front of the subway and got her legs cut off. So he realizes this guy is like why Detta and Odetta are trapped in the same mind together.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes this guy is the key to split them apart, right? And I can't fully remember what he does.
And doesn't he fucking jump him in front of a goddamn train to kill Jack? Doesn't
But
he like
as
he feeds him into something, doesn't he?
but as he does it, right? Because Odetta, or excuse me, Detta is about to kill Eddie, right? Like, doesn't
Yeah,
she?
she has him like fucking tied up in this weird noose thing and is like dragging him.
Yeah, that's right. So she realizes because she realizes she can't kill Roland while he's not there because then she can't get back to her world.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she like trices up Eddie, but then whatever Roland does, yeah, he like forces this guy to kill himself. But as he does, he like looks back with this guy's face through the door so that Detta will see this guy and realize he is the one who's caused her all these problems in her life.
Yes.
And then as soon as Jack dies, it like breaks something in Detta and Odetta's mind, right?
Or I don't know about breaks, or if to me, I feel like it was like putting it back together. Instead of being like two split people, she's now
Sure.
one person.
But I thought now she's three people,
I
right?
don't know. I don't know if that was she's three people or if she's just a new person
Or
now.
okay, is that what it is? So the two of them merge into a third person.
Yeah, that's how
okay.
I interpreted that.
Yeah,
And maybe
because
that's not right. I don't know. I haven't read the next one.
no, but I think you're right because she also calls herself Susanna Dean.
Yeah. So I believe it is like their two consciousnesses coming together now to be like the third for Roland, right?
Because is Roland must be one of the three.
I think so.
I feel like that's kind of the takeaway from the book is
I
that
guess.
now he has three people. So now he has Eddie,
Or,
but isn't his name Eddie Dean? Isn't that what
yeah,
I said?
it is
And now her name is Susanna Dean?
correct.
Huh. Interesting.
Okay, can I speculate for a second?
Please do.
I wonder if since he saved Jake, if Jake will come back. And maybe that'll be the third.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't know. This is something because I feel like they made a big deal about that he kind of caused the time paradox and Jake didn't get pushed in front of that car and didn't die.
Right.
Or did
Yeah.
he create a time paradox? I don't fucking know. Who knows? I don't know enough about the series, I guess, to even talk.
All I know is right at the end of this, Susanna, because that's right, she had triced up Eddie and then left him down where the lobsterosities were going to come out and
Oh
eat
yeah,
it.
they're gonna eat him.
Yeah, they come out asking their weird questions, and then she runs down there and saves him once her mind like melds into one cohesive mind. They we should also mention too that through a lot of this, Eddie has been struggling to get over his heroin addiction.
Yeah,
And that's actually why he wanted to kill Roland at the second door because he wants to come through so he can get a fix.
yeah. He just wants some heroin.
Yeah. That's why he was going to kill him. But yeah. So now by the end of this, you have Detta and Odetta have kind of who were these two like split personalities have merged into one cohesive personality now. And then you have Eddie who has gotten over his drug addiction problem also.
Well, Roland didn't really give him a choice. He
No,
was like,
he
"That's
didn't.
your old life.
Yeah, exactly.
You are not going to be a piece of shit on my watch."
Right.
And did we say that what's the new girl's name? I'm sorry.
Susanna?
Her and Eddie, Roland believes them both to be gunslingers.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he mentions that a few
Doesn't he say
times.
that?
Yes. Yeah, and he doesn't necessarily think like the whole thing with Eddie. I mean, I mentioned that when they got in the gunfight because he saw the way that Eddie reacted and was able to, you know, hold his own during this gunfight. But gunslinger is not necessarily like you shoot a gun. He talks a lot and refers a lot back to like the first book and the teachings of his, master when he was being taught to be a gunslinger
Yeah.
and kind of like his heightened awareness of things. It's different subtle things like that. It's not necessarily the fact that you can shoot a gun. But now apparently Roland and these two are about to go forward in who knows how many more books.
I don't know how many more there are. And is the series concluded?
um I don't know that, to be honest. Is the Dark Tower series concluded?
What's the internet say?
What does the internet say? It says The Dark Tower is a series of 8 novels, 1 short story, and a children's book.
There's a children's book? Excuse me, Stephen King?
According to Wikipedia, there is.
What's it called?
Um,
Tick
I
tock, the clock goes bop.
I don't know. I don't see that. So there is 8. It looks like there's 8 main books. So The Gunslinger, The Drawing of the Three, The Wastelands, Wizard and Glass, The Little Sisters of Illyria, Wolves of Kala, Song of Susanna, The Dark Tower, and The Wind Through the Keyhole. And they were concluded in 2012, it looks like.
So it is over.
That's what it looks like. But see, what's weird is The Wind Through the Keyhole is noted as being book 4.5.
What?
And the Little Sisters of Illyria is noted as being book 0.5.
What is the Little Sisters of Illyria?
Maybe this is the children's story? Is a fantasy novel it was originally published in 1998. In the anthology Legends in 2002, it was included in the Stephen King's collection. Oh, weird. It basically, it looks like it was revised to be a prequel to The Gunslinger.
Interesting.
I
So
don't
the
know.
next book for us would be The Wastelands?
I believe so. Yeah, I
Correct?
believe that's what comes next in the chronologically, if you can put it that way, in the series. Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't understand the cosmology of this place very much still.
No,
Of like
not at
where
all, man.
Roland is exactly. Like I
No, but
don't know where he is at all.
maybe that's the stuff that's going to get more, like we're gonna figure that out as we go, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. There's got to be. I'm sure he gets into all of that because there's definitely like multiple realities going on, right?
Oh, there has to be. Yeah, I would guess. I want. It makes me really wonder too. I'd be curious to know like how Stephen King goes about this. Like, did he have this like, okay, he's like, there's a dark tower, and he just starts writing something, or did he
I don't
know
know.
like how he was gonna get from A to B to Z? Because it doesn't feel that way right now. Like even at this point in the story, after the drawing of the three, it feels like he's almost just like winging it. Like obviously he's not. Like I know that. I know he's far
No.
smarter than that. But it feels like he is. I don't know. I guess maybe we'll just have to keep going forward with the series and find out.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep going. I don't know how you feel, but
I do.
I kind of want to see how this ends.
Yeah, I'm genuinely intrigued by this series. Maybe because it's one of the weirdest series I've ever heard.
Oh, dude, it's by far the weirdest thing. Well, I don't know. I have listened to like Area X and shit.
Right.
That's pretty weird too.
I There's just something about the way King writes, though, man. It's
I feel like his writing is so good sometimes. Sometimes it can be confusing sometimes, but like when it all comes together, it really sings.
Well, it can't. I just feel like, and again, I know this is not true of the way he writes, because obviously he is one of the most prolific writers like in the world. It almost feels like, though, that his writing is far closer to like a string of consciousness than like, okay, let me write this paragraph. Okay, now let me read back over it. Let me edit it down. Let me change this. Let me like it feels like there's very little um polishing tweaks to it. It just feels much more like this is what I want to say and this is how I'm going to say it. And I don't really give a shit if you understand it, if you like it, if you disagree with it. I don't really
Yeah,
care. This is how I'm going to say it. And part of me appreciates that in a way. Like,
and I think Stephen King's like when he does like people's like inner monologues, it's so good. The way especially like when he does Eddie in this book, how he's like kind of always thinking about how he's gonna get drugs next.
yeah,
And so that's always like kind of like a background murmur in his thoughts, and it kind of comes through in the writing. I think that's so well done.
yeah. It's very believable when you get
Yeah.
these kind of inner. That's what I mean. It doesn't feel like somebody's thoughts that were edited to sound
No.
like somebody's thoughts. It's like Stephen King took himself into this headspace and he put those words down instead of, like I said, you. It seems like you can kind of get that sense in some books where they write a paragraph and they go back and I got to change that. That doesn't sound right. And to the by the time it's done, it sounds like it was somebody writing lines for somebody else. But this sounds like this character, Eddie, said these things. Like, I know that might sound ridiculous, but it's just, I don't know. It's just the feeling I get.
No, I agree with you. I think a lot of Stephen King's writing is very special.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's not to say it's not confusing, because a lot of it does
Mhm.
confuse me.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
definitely is confusing, and I think my low IQ contributes to that.
yeah, yes, same here. But there's something about it though that I don't think any other writer to me like fully encapsulates. I mean, and that's I also, as soon as I finished this, I went right back into The Way of Kings for the next part of that.
Oh, okay.
And I just feel like those are two kind of polarizing um topics because both very intriguing, right? So we'll
Hmm.
just put like the Dark Tower world next to like uh the Stormlight Archives for a second. But I without like making this another hour-long conversation,
Okay.
um knowing what I know about Brandon Sanderson, right?
Hmm.
Um his religious affiliations or what have you, it almost makes me feel like the Way of Kings is sort of constrained because of that. Whereas, like,
Hmm.
if Stephen King has a thought or a feeling like that, the fact that who knows how many times they said the N-word in this book,
Yeah.
if he has a thought or a feeling, he's not going to censor that because of any prior thoughts or what are other people going to think about this or how is this going to be seen. He's just going to write it down. Like I said, and you as the listener are either going to enjoy it or you're going to hate it. And he doesn't give a shit if you do or not. Whereas, while I obviously hold The Way of Kings in very, very high esteem too, and I don't want to take anything away from that, it
Hmm.
very much so feels kind of constrained because of, possible feelings that maybe Brandon Sanderson had while he was writing it. Like, oh, maybe I would want to say this, but it kind of goes against my belief system, therefore I shouldn't say that. How are people, my peers, going to see that if I say it this way? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I could
Yeah,
be 100% off base with that, but
I feel where you're coming from. I don't know. I feel like I would need to think on this conversation before I really have much more to say.
that's what I said. We could easily probably turn that into another hour long or more
for
conversation.
sure, because there's like 50 things I want to talk about with like specific examples.
Right.
But
Well, let's just.
I have
I
my
mean,
own
let's just.
opinions about some of that stuff. Oh, I don't know, man. You're messing with my head now. Can't
I
just say
well.
this when the episode's almost over.
Well, there was no good time to say it in the beginning, so
You're right. There's never a good time to say something like that.
might have to turn it into its own freaking round table at this point.
Write it down.
Um. Yeah, I mean, obviously, just two contrasting worlds, two very contrasting writers, but for sure, I feel like I can hold them both like high on their own pedestals. Like
Yeah.
that, I feel like I don't want to take anything away from either of them. It's just I feel like that's the comparison though between King's writing and someone like Brandon Sanderson is that King's writing just feels very unfiltered. He just he just fucking writes, man, and it's amazing that he can do that. Like,
Well, and be really cohesive.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously, King has you could fill a library with just his books.
Oh, easily.
And I know we've barely scratched the surface of King books, but it really does make me even more intrigued to get into more things that he has done.
I
And
know, me too.
see, just see what's going on in this freaking dude's head. But yeah, this one ended up being kind of long because I was rambling there at the end. So
That's okay.
Yeah, you got anything else on this one, you think?
No, just thank you all for listening. I really appreciate each and every single one of you. Keep them emails coming, because I feel like it got me to take a second look at a series I had kind of written off, and maybe I'm doing that in more other places, so I need to be informed better.
For sure. Yeah, and again, yeah, we really appreciate it. Adam, I believe, is his name, who suggested this to us. So thank you, Adam, for the suggestion. And yeah, we definitely look forward to moving forward with this series and following up on this. We already are kind of backlogged a little bit, so
Yeah.
but this is good because obviously at any point now, if we don't have something we directly need to follow up with, we can always jump into one of these books for sure.
Yeah, and I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So huge thank you for that. We really do appreciate it. And we appreciate anyone and everyone for listening. We really do. So thank you guys for that. Got anything else before we wrap this one up?
No.
All right. So with that, we will catch you guys in the next one.